They sat me down in a soft-lit office and said it was time for a nursing home. I was 90, and on paper, it made sense. I nodded, because what else do you do? Then someone named the yearly cost, well over $100,000, and something in me refused to accept it. I did not know yet that a real government-backed door existed across the ocean, one with a caregiver who felt like family, and a monthly cost that changed everything. This is the decision nobody expects to make. And most families never even know this door exists. I want to tell you this the way it actually unfolded, because I think a version of it is happening in living rooms all over this country right now. Maybe it is happening in yours. An adult child gets a call from a doctor. A parent falls, or forgets something important, or simply gets tired in a way that scares everyone. And then comes the meeting, the folder of brochures, the gentle voice explaining that it might be time. Nobody in that room is a villain. The doctor is doing their job. The children are scared and trying to do the right thing. I was scared too, if I am honest. 90 years old does something to your confidence, even when your mind is sharp and your heart still wants more out of life. Here is the thing. Nobody tells you clearly enough. A private room in an American nursing home now runs somewhere around $10,000 a month, and a shared room is not far behind. Over a full year, you are looking at well over $100,000. Stay 2 or 3 years, which is common, and the number can climb past $250,000 for one person. That is not a typo. Medicare sounds like it should help, and it does for a little while. It only covers up to 100 days of skilled nursing after a qualifying hospital stay, and even then, there is a daily copay once you pass day 20. After that, you are largely paying out of pocket, month after month, until savings run low enough that Medicaid can step in. That is the real financial cliff most families do not see coming until they are standing at the edge of it. And the costs vary wildly depending on where you live. Some states run closer to $5,000 a month. Others run into the tens of thousands. So when I say the average is around 10,000, please hear that as a starting point for your own research, not a promise. Every state, every facility, every level of care changes the number. I sat in that office with my daughter and watched the number land on her face. She loves me. She would have found a way to make it work, even if it meant her own retirement took a hit. I did not want that trade. I had spent my whole life trying to give my children more room to breathe, not less. That night, almost by accident, a family friend mentioned something in passing. She said her own mother had not gone into a facility at all. She had moved, legally, permanently, to the Philippines, and was living a full life there with help nearby and money left over every month instead of draining away. I remember thinking, that cannot be real. Surely there is a catch. There was no catch, but there was a lot to learn, and learning it took weeks of careful, unglamorous research. This is where the second part of the story begins, and where the fear started to turn into something closer to curiosity. The path is called the Special Resident Retirees Visa, run by the Philippine Retirement Authority, an actual government agency, not some private company selling a dream. This is not a loophole. It is a published, regulated program that has existed for decades and gets updated from time to time, most recently in a significant way back in September of 2025. Here is how it generally works, and please treat these numbers as a snapshot rather than gospel, because rules like this can shift. Applicants place a refundable deposit with an accredited bank, not a fee that disappears, a deposit that stays yours. For someone 50 or older with a qualifying pension, that deposit has typically sat around $15,000, with proof of at least $800 a month in pension income for a single applicant. Without a pension, The deposit requirement moves closer to $30,000 instead. That deposit can, in many cases, later be converted toward things like a condominium purchase, subject to rules and timing that a licensed professional should walk you through directly. This is worth checking with the Philippine Retirement Authority itself before you assume anything about your own situation, since age brackets and requirements have changed before and can change again. Once approved, the benefits are honestly generous. Holders are not required to file an annual report the way many other visa categories demand. There is no repeated card renewal process, no exit clearance paperwork every time you leave the country, and no requirement to be physically present 365 days a year. You can travel home for holidays, weddings, whatever life brings, without losing your status. There is also a preferential rate through the National Health Insurance System, and in many cases, foreign pension and annuity income is treated as tax-exempt locally. None of this replaces sound financial or legal advice for your specific situation, but it does show this is a structured system built for exactly this kind of decision, not some backroom arrangement. Before you skip ahead thinking this sounds too good, let's talk about the actual math, because that is where most families either commit or walk away. Rent in many parts of the Philippines runs roughly 80% below what comparable housing costs in the United States. Many retirees report living comfortably on somewhere between $1,500 and $2,500 a month, all in, covering housing, food, utilities, and daily living. Compare that to a nursing home bill north of $9,000 or $10,000 a month, and the gap becomes impossible to ignore. Say you need in-home help, not just companionship, but real daily assistance. Families commonly hire a live-in caregiver and separately cover room, board, and food for that caregiver, often adding somewhere around $100 to $200 a month on top of the caregiver's pay. If you go through an agency to find someone vetted and background checked, expect an additional placement fee, often in the range of $200 to $400 one time, not monthly. If a facility setting feels safer than living alone with a caregiver, licensed assisted living options exist too. One facility I came across, offered as an example and not a universal price, starts around $1,070 a month for a private room, 3 meals a day, shared nursing and caregiver staff, utilities, housekeeping, and laundry. Costs rise from there depending on the level of medical care needed, the same way they would anywhere. Here is where it gets better. And this is the part most people miss. Healthcare abroad is not an afterthought in this plan. It has to be built in on purpose. Medicare does not follow you overseas. It simply does not cover care outside the United States, so private insurance or direct payment becomes the plan instead. The upside is that private hospitals in the Philippines, places built to Western standards, often deliver quality comparable to what you would find at home, at a fraction of the price you would pay here. I want to be completely straightforward about something important. Medicaid does not transfer overseas either, and neither do most VA long-term care benefits. If your family's plan depends on any of those following you across the ocean, it will not work, and you need to know that before you make any decisions, not after. That is not even the best part of what changed for our family, though. The best part had nothing to do with spreadsheets. Leaving decades of familiar streets, favorite chairs, and grandchildren down the road is not a small thing, and I will not pretend it was easy. There were nights early on where the quiet felt too big, and the distance from family felt like a hole in the chest that no ocean view could fill. But something shifted after the first few weeks. A caregiver who started as a hired professional slowly became something closer to family, remembering small preferences, checking in without being asked, treating the relationship as personal rather than transactional. Elder care there tends to carry a strong cultural weight around respect and closeness, The kind of attentiveness that can feel different from a rotating shift schedule back home. I am not saying every experience matches this, because every family and every caregiver relationship is different. But this is the reputation that drew many families there in the first place. Independence came back in small, physical ways, choosing my own schedule, sitting on a porch in real, warm weather instead of a hallway under fluorescent lights, deciding when to eat, when to nap, when to simply sit outside and watch the day happen. Those choices matter more than people realize until they are taken away. None of this erased the distance. Video calls became a weekly ritual instead of a daily convenience. Flights home take real planning and real money, and that honest cost belongs on the ledger too, right alongside the savings. This is not a story about escaping family. It is a story about choosing an environment that let the remaining years feel like living instead of waiting. So where do things stand now? Looking back at that same kind of room where this all started, the number that once felt like a life sentence, $100,000 a year and climbing, no longer sits over our family like a shadow. Money that would have drained away every month is instead available for actual living, for flights home, for small comforts that add up to a good life. The parent in this story chose their own next chapter instead of having it chosen for them. I want to be honest that this is not the right answer for everyone, and I say that with zero judgment. Some medical conditions genuinely require the kind of intensive, around-the-clock skilled nursing care that only a well-equipped facility close to specialists can provide. Some families cannot manage the distance emotionally, and that is a completely valid reason to stay close to home. There is no shame on either side of this decision. What I do believe is that too many families assume there is only one path once a parent reaches a certain age, and that simply is not true anymore. A legal, government-regulated door exists with real numbers behind it, real healthcare options built in, and a culture of caregiving that many families describe as deeply personal rather than clinical. If you or someone you love is sitting in a version of that soft-lit office right now, hearing a number that feels impossible, please know you have more time and more options than that first conversation might suggest. Get current figures directly from the Philippine Retirement Authority. Compare real nursing home quotes in your own state against real cost of living figures abroad. Ask hard questions about healthcare coverage before you assume anything transfers with you. Talk to an elder law attorney or financial planner who understands both sides of this choice. There is no secret handshake here, no magic senior card, no giant sign at any door announcing this option. But there is a real working system that thousands of families have already used, quietly, honestly, and successfully. Now you know where to look, and you know what to ask before you assume full price or the same four walls are your only options left. If this story gave you something to think about, consider subscribing because there is more honest, carefully researched information like this coming, the kind that respects your intelligence and your hard-earned money. And if you know someone quietly worrying about this exact conversation, a parent, a spouse, a friend, please share this with them. Growing older does not have to mean losing the ability to choose where and how you get to live.